If everybody will take a seat, please, we get this meeting started. This is our meeting of March 8, 2011. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call.
Ms. Drummond. Here. Mr. Birch.
Here.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Ms. Johnston. Mr. Trainee.
Here.
Mr. Flynn. Present. Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Here.
Ms. Osiander.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Pledge your allegiance is next. Mr. Starr, would you listen to that?
Honored to. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bill. Now down to the next item in business, his minutes of previous meeting, and we have minutes on here, February 1st, 2011.
Move to accept.
Is there any changes or additions? Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. Those minutes are approved, Madam Clerk. We're now down to item 5, Mayor's report. Mr. Mayor, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. As you know, this weekend concluded the Fur Rendezvous and the start of the Iditarod, and I just want to give a shout out to the municipal manager and all the public works, public safety, all the different departments that participated in making the event just absolutely tremendous. And we got nothing but great comments back from the organizers who we work with every year, and this year I think was bigger and better than ever. So the Greater Anchorage Inc., of which Mr. Hall's past chair of the board, and others did a tremendous job, and we're just proud to be partners with them. And then tomorrow I'm going to be giving testimony at the hearing that BOMER is calling. That's the Bureau of Energy Management and Resources. It used to be MMS, the Mineral Management something. And anyway, we'll be talking about oil exploration in the continental shelf and how we are supportive of us developing our own resources in the United States. And so that'll be my duty tomorrow night. So that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to recognize Ernie Hall. I'm told you're the Reindeer Roundup Chairman. When we get to you, I want to know how you rounded up the reindeer. For Assembly Chair's report, the only report is I'll be leaving on Friday, going back to Washington, D.C. I'm on the alumni board for the National League of Cities. So they want me there, and we've also got a meeting with the Western Municipal Conference. We'll be talking to other Western states that share the same problem we do when it comes to our relationship with the federal government. They changed their pattern dealing with the state as they moved west. And when we take a look at land ownership pattern, it's predominantly federal-owned land as you move to the west. We know how Alaska is, so I'll be back there talking about that. Now we're on to committee reports. Debbie?
Ms. Drummond and I attended a sort of a community presentation on Title 21 that was hosted by the former chair of our city planning department. Big attendance, was interesting. We are still on hold for the committee meetings for Title 21, but Mr. Coffey was a presenter at that meeting, and he told us that he would have a document by April.
This year?
This year.
Good. I know I'm hearing a lot from people concerned about how many years it's taking, so. Anything else, Debbie?
No, it will be done before I leave this body, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Gutierrez, sir.
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Paul?
Mr. Chairman, I had opportunity and privilege to work with the Fur Rondi dog sled races, and I actually worked Goose Lake Station doing radio reporting in, so it was very interesting, having worked it for many years in traffic control point, trying to direct cars. Directing dog teams was a bit more exciting and interesting. As I watched them going around that curve, we didn't have any mishaps. That's a good thing. And then just a note, the Public Safety Committee will be meeting. The meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. It's been postponed till Thursday the 17th at noon, and it'll be at the APD Training Center at Diamond and Jewel Lake at noon, Thursday the 17th.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Ernie, oh great reindeer rounder-upper, I heard you are. So what, they ran once and you had to collect them all and bring them back to the starting gate to run again?
That's the way the game works. We did that 4 times, walked them up and down the streets, and it was a lot of fun. But I do want to echo, particularly the mayor, and on behalf of Fur Rondi, the support that we get out of the city, street maintenance, the police department, everyone, it's just absolutely phenomenal, and you couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with, and Ronnie wants to be officially on the record as stating that. So thank you very, very much.
Ernie, since you brought it for Rendezvous, I remember a time period when the mayor and I and Debbie were on the assembly together. And I don't know if you joined us at that time. I think, Jennifer, maybe you had, but the problem was they wanted to get rid of Fur Rendezvous. And we were within a short period of time of Fur Rendezvous not existing. And Ernie, very much to your credit and the rest of the people on the board, Fur Rendezvous is surviving and doing better than ever. So thank you very much, because it's part of this town. Mr. Starr.
No report.
Yes, Pat.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Jennifer. Elvie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind folks, first off, that there's going to be an audit committee meeting on Friday at 11 o'clock. It's a follow-up from the last meeting we had to discuss the police and fire retirement medical audit presented by Mr. Askins, and we're going to have a follow-up because we gave the board an opportunity to talk about the audit and present their comments to us on Thursday. And also, and I've already let the chief and Mr. Vacalis know that I'm going to pull the online payment system police audit that was done, because I'd like to, as the chair of the audit committee, it's my responsibility, if you read the code, a little bit further discussion, and I'd like to ask, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, our clerk to extend the meeting on Friday for another half hour so we can take up both of these issues at the same time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll talk to clerk, ma'am. Chris.
Yeah, just a couple things I would mention. I did have the privilege of providing testimony to the on the Alaska OCS development potential to BOMER, which is his subsequent agent. They succeeded the MMS, the Marine MMS. What was it? Marine
Minerals Management Service.
Management Service. I can remember that one. And the new one now is BOMER, and that's the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Regulation, and Enforcement. And thankfully, this body has never, as near as I can remember, has never had Friday night hearings. But they had 50 people signed up to testify over this Centerpoint building, and it started at 7 o'clock on Friday night, the 25th of February. But was able to go and give testimony in support of that objective and the importance of keeping OCS active and engaged in Alaska. Secondly, last Friday afternoon, Mr. Vacalis and I had the privilege of addressing a Chamber of Commerce group, and it was the Leadership and Executive Advancement Program. And there's a couple dozen folks in there that had signed up for a program the Chamber offers, and they have, I think every couple of weeks, they have different presenters, but Mr. Vacalis and I had an opportunity to discuss the city and the city perspective on a wide range of issues. But it was a good opportunity, and I was actually pretty interested to see the diversity of participation in that program. But
that's good,
Chris.
It.
Thank you.
Thank you. Harriet, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No report.
Thank you. Next item in business is addendum to the agenda. If I get a motion to incorporate.
Second.
I'll go through it with you. Item 9A2, under resolutions for action, Resolution AR 2011-71, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Dr. Sharon Shamard. How do you pronounce it? Shamard, sorry. Item 9A3, Resolution AR 2011-72, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring and recognizing the cadets of the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps at Diamond High School for developing state flag protocols. Under resolutions for action, other, item 9B10, Resolution AR 2011-70, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its conditional protest regarding renewal of restaurant/eating place license 4293, doing business as Uncle Joe's Pizzeria located at 3401 East Tudor Road, Anchorage. Item 9D12, under new business, the same memorandum, AM 149, 2011, statutory second injury fund and state administrative service fee for workers' compensation risk management division, $263,636. Item 9D13 is same memorandum, AM 150, 2011, 2011 grant to Greater Anchorage, Inc., GIA, in support of the 2011 Fur Rendezvous Winter Festival in the amount of $60,000 to the Mayor's office. Item 9D14 is same memorandum, AM 151, 2011 grant to Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, AEDC, to operate and administer AEDC programs, $162,200 to the Mayor's office. Under information reports, item 9E6, Information Memorandum AIM 28, 2011, School Budget Advisory Commission report on the Anchorage School District proposed budget for fiscal years 2011-2012, Office of Management and Budget. Under ordinances and resolutions for introduction, item 9F2A, Notice of Substitution of Attachment to AO 2011-33, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21, Use Regulations as provided for in AR 2006-72 and providing for an effective date by a motion on the floor by the sponsor at introduction on March 8, 2011 to correct attachment of Chapter 21.10 Chukaki River Land Use Regulations will be submitted as included with this notice of substitution. Then we have a laid on the table item. And these items will be numbered item 9E7, Information Memorandum AIM 27-2011, Anchorage School District 6-year financial plan, fiscal years 2012 to 2017 for the Anchorage School District. Item 9F12, under ordinances and resolutions for introduction, ordinance AO 2011-40, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code section 3.20.070 regarding executive branch organization to remove the Division of Neighborhoods, Health and Human Services. Public hearing requested on 3/29/11. There's an A that comes with it. Item 9F12A, a same memorandum AM 152, 2011. Madam Clerk, anything else I didn't add? Now, is there anything else that needs to be added to the agenda? Seeing nothing. Is there any objection to the inclusion of the addendum to the agenda?
Just a
Yes,
question.
Marion.
Where is the financial plan for the school district?
It should be right here on laid on the table items, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any objection to the inclusion of the addendum to the agenda and that laid on items? Not seeing any objection. That's been approved. Now let's go on to the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Debbie, I'll start with you, ma'am.
Thank you. I would like to pull F2 and F2A. And,
Let's see. F2 and F2A.
yes, sir. And also on the addendum 9A2.
9A2. Anything else, ma'am? Mike?
No items from me tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Holzer?
9B as in boy 10.
Ernie?
No items.
Bill?
9 echoes 7. Off the laid on the table items.
Okay. Pat, sir?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Jennifer? Elvie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to pull item E2, just for the purpose of postponing acceptance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
E.
Chris?
No items.
Harriet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull 9E6 off the addendum for some comments. Thank you.
Okay.
9A, 1 and 3.
Administration, Mr. Mayor, anything, sir?
Oh, wait a minute.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
We should also have pulled 9B3 for reading.
9A3?
Off the addendum.
You mean
E as in boy, 3.
9A3.
A3.
I'm sorry.
I don't see Dr. Schmark.
Okay.
And
Is that all?
see Mr. McMillan's not here today?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No. Let's see. Okay, machine. I know. Is there any objection to the rest of these items? Seeing none, those items are approved. Mr. Mayor, was there any boards or commissions that were appointed that you'd like to talk to us about that were approved?
Only if anyone is here in the audience who just got appointed, please come to the mic, tell us who you are. and-
Appointed to board or commission, come forward and tell us what you were appointed to. We appreciate it.
Thank you. My name is Dan Young, and I was appointed to the Planning Board.
Good. That's work.
I'm Jay Delaney, an appointment to the Public Transit Advisory Board, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve.
Thank you for doing it, sir. We appreciate it.
Dale Patrick to the Zoning Board and Assemblers.
Good. You're going to have a lot of fun work.
I'm Craig Lance, and I was appointed to the Chugiak Fire Service Area Board of Supervisors.
Debbie notices.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jim Sawhill, and I was appointed to the Urban Design Commission.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Harriet.
if I could, actually, we have not appointed some of these folks yet, even though I do appreciate their offer to serve. The ones who are under item 11, old business, have not yet been approved.
We'll get there.
Thank
We'll get there.
Through the chair, my name is Randy McCain, and I've been appointed to the Eagle River Chugiak Parks and Recreation Service Area Board. Thank you.
Good. Yes, they're great people out there, Debbie and Bill. I mean, they'll volunteer. Thank you guys for the boards and commissions you're on. That's what makes this town work. Thank you very much. We'll now go back to those I'm going to pull for a little further discussion. The first one is item 9A2.
Move to approve. Second.
This is 2011-71. Ask unanimous consent, so no objection. That item is approved. Who's reading and who's presenting?
This is a resolution of the Assembly recognizing and honoring Dr. Sharon Chamard.
All the fairly people, come on.
Come on forward, please.
Come on.
And if somebody wants to take a picture, come on down front, because you get a better picture going that way. We always have people to stay in the back, and then you go out the back of their heads. So come on down forward.
Dawn, you count. Yep, come on. Go ahead.
Whereas Sharon Chamard was born in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, attended Rutgers University, earned her MA in 1997 and her PhD in criminal justice in 2003, and was hired as assistant professor at the University of Alaska Anchorage Justice Center in 2003, earning tenure and promotion to associate professor in 2009. Whereas Sharon chose to make her home in Fairview, one of Anchorage's oldest and most diverse neighborhoods, where people make the difference. Being elected secretary of the Fairview Community Council in 2004, and after 3 terms as council secretary, was elected council vice president in 2007, and council president in 2008, winning re-election in 2009 and 2010. Whereas during her tenure as president of the Fairview Community Council, Sharon has demonstrated exceptional leadership, helping to guide the council and the neighborhood through contentious issues in public forums with a steady, even hand, ensuring that all sides were given the opportunity to be heard. And whereas Sharon has demonstrated exceptional citizenship through her community volunteerism, including service as Secretary of the Neighbor Works Anchorage Board, Vice Chair of the Anchorage Public Safety Advisory Commission, and as a member of the Mayor's Police Chief Search Committee. And whereas Sharon, in her professional capacity through the UAA Justice Center, has assisted the Anchorage Police Department with several projects, has provided valuable training for APD's Community Action Policing team, and worked closely with them on implementing and evaluating the SARA project. Whereas Sharon has decided not to seek re-election as president of the Fairview Community Council, though she will continue to serve the citizens of Anchorage both in her professional capacity through the UAA Justice Center and through her service on boards, commissions, and advisory groups. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly resolves and that we recognize and honor Dr. Sharon Chamard for her exceptional citizenship by volunteering in the community and neighborhood, passed and approved this day. Congratulations.
The floor is yours, my dear. Congratulations. Great work.
Hey, Barbara. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you all for this honor. It's quite surprising. I came here expecting to accept recognition of the Fairview Community Council on its 35th anniversary. So I'm glad that there are so many Fairview people here because I was going to say, in response to that recognition, that the operations of the Community Council and our successes are largely a function of a collective effort and not one particular person. And that still applies given the change and the kind of surprise here. So yeah, I mean, I really have to thank all of the people in Fairview, and only a small number of them are here today. But it is true that people make the difference in Fairview and every place else. And since I've come to Anchorage, I've come to recognize that this is a community where everybody can get involved. And I find it kind of ironic that my citizenship has been pointed out here. And I'm actually a Canadian citizen and not an American. So that's testament to the fact that anybody can make a contribution to the community if they just want to get involved. So thank you very much.
We have a few questions, ma'am. Doctor, don't run away yet. We have a few questions for you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Mr. Gutierrez, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sharon, I just wanted to say I've had the pleasure of working with you on several different occasions in different capacities with my day job in Mountain View at the Weed and Seed and through the former gang and youth violence policy team, and it's always been a pleasure and very, very glad knowing you're involved with any of the projects that come up. And so this is a richly deserved, I think, recognition, and we're very glad to have you here. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and it's been a pleasure working with you also.
Mr. Honeman, sir.
Dr. Smart, I just echo the sentiments there, and I know that one of your past presidents in the audience here, at least one I know, Darrell Hess. In the past, I know we worked on several projects together, yourself, myself, and particularly my past profession, but I not only have one, not just two, but I have 3 Fairview Pride T-shirts that I wear long sleeve, by the way, and I'm hoping to be an adopted son in the Fairview neighborhood as well. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. And we have new T-shirts in case you haven't bought them.
Selling 2, the old one and the new one. Mayor Sullivan, sir?
Yes, I want to thank you, Sharon, for your service to the community. We're one of the best volunteer towns in the nation, and it's people like you that make that statistic real. And I also want to thank you for your efforts on the Police Chief Search Committee. You're a valuable member, and I think we're going to find ways to pull you back into projects in the future if you're willing. So thank you.
Well, yes, I'm always willing if it's interesting to get involved.
Harriet, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sharon, it's always been a pleasure to know you. I want to just relate to the rest of the assembly and the public that I've run into this woman in many places. We took a class together from Dr. Selcraig in 2007, I think that was. Sharon got assigned to the Muldoon group, and I got assigned to the Spenard group, but we got to hear each other through the course of a semester at UAA. And she brought her class's study of, describe the name of the study, the hotels and the issues in Spenard, the criminal element and signs and symbols. It was great. The Spenard Community Council just soaked up what you had to say, and crime is actually down in Spenard because I think people are paying attention to the kinds of information that you brought forward to us.
Well, thank you. And that was a project done with my business and crime students. They went out, and did observations of hotels and motels in Spenard and identified those based on calls for service data, the ones that had the biggest demand on police resources. And that information was passed along to the Community Action Policing team and helped guide their efforts. And so I think they certainly deserve a lot of the credit for what's been happening in Spenard also.
They are getting the credit. In fact, they're now bringing their services to the Sand Lake area, which is very glad to have them. And I believe one of those hotels was recently hit with a bill for $30,000 for excessive police calls. So thank you.
Mr. Flynn, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sharon, honored to see you here tonight. I guess, the Fairview Community Council, of course, is a very rigorous public process by which they evaluate different issues before the neighborhood. And I'm just curious, what's the time schedule and when's the public hearing on whether or not you're allowed to step down as president?
Well, I'm kind of afraid to go to the meeting on Thursday because I initially became involved on the board when I went away for a conference in March and came back and found out I'd been elected secretary, and that was 7 years later, so 7 years ago, excuse me.
Be very afraid. Thank you, Dr. Schumer.
Okay. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sharon, I just want to say thank you for your service and your commitment to this community.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Just a note of warning, my wife was president of our community council for 10 years.
We have a statute of limitations, actually.
We don't.
And actually, the new people that most likely will be elected on Thursday, I have utmost confidence in them. They have a great vision for Fairview, and we'll continue to work together to make Fairview a Winter City neighborhood of choice.
My wife worked at Fairview Elementary School, and I know it's a great neighborhood. Right. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good.
Next one was probed by Jennifer. This is Resolution Air 2011-72, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring and recognizing the cadets in the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps at Diamond High School for developing the state flag protocols. Jennifer, I get a motion from you.
Second.
Ask unanimous. Should no objection, that's done. Mayor, are you presenting and who's reading? Okay.
I'm reading, Mr. Chair.
You're reading? Okay. Cadets, come on forward.
This is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring and recognizing the cadets in the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps at Diamond High School for developing state flag protocols. Whereas 2 years ago, cadets in the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps at Diamond High School researched Alaska flag etiquette and could not find any instructions or directions. And whereas subsequent research showed that Alaska flag statutes were vastly undeveloped and left many important aspects of flag protocol unaddressed. And whereas the cadets decided to develop protocols for how to properly fold the Alaska state flag and how to properly display a flag against a wall. And whereas the cadets, through much trial and error, figured out the best way to fold it into a triangle shape that results in the North Star being on top. And whereas State Representative Craig Johnson sponsored House Bill 98, which standardizes procedures for the display, folding, and an additional method for the retirement of our state flag as developed by the cadets. And whereas the legislation is designed to ensure consistent, respectful, and appropriate procedures for the handling of our state flag. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly resolves that the cadets of the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps at Diamond High School are to be commended for their hard work and diligence in developing state flag protocols, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Robert Halzer. I'm the Battalion Commander of the Diamond JROTC program. With me is my Executive Officer, Cadet Major Bianca Armstrong, and my Battalion Sergeant Major, Cadets Command Sergeant Major Aaron Hernandez. So as the certificate said, we were doing a service learning project for a flag retirement ceremony, and we became aware that there was no way to fold our flag, our state flag, or display it for that matter. So working with Representative Johnson's office to get the statutes placed, we recently, earlier today, had the opportunity and privilege of testifying to the state Senate about the bill.
We have a few questions for you, if you don't mind. Mr. Honeman?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I'm actually a graduate at Bartlett High School and Cadet Lieutenant Colonel retired from that program. In fact, at one time, years back, it was Bartlett had the only Army JROTC program. Chugach had the only Navy junior ROTC program, and then the other high schools at that time were Air Force. And I'm just curious as to how many how it's laid out now in the 8 high schools in Anchorage, or do you know?
I believe that they're mainly Army. I think there's 4 Army, 2 to 3 Navy, and the rest are Air Force.
And I noticed a few of your decorations for your units. Honor Unit with distinction from Diamond JROTC as well?
Yes, sir. We actually scored a all-time record on the Cadet Formal Inspection, scoring a 98.93%.
That's fantastic. That's very notable. I don't know if anybody else recognizes that's it's a pretty outstanding accomplishment, and indeed, I see your ASIs here, and I see you recognize your principals here, too. Mr. Guyette, I know you're very proud of, and several students as well, so congratulations on you guys' efforts combined, I'm sure, in trying to get this thing put together with a good protocol for it. So, very respectful thing to do. Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Gutierrez, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cadets, very well done. I understand it hasn't passed the state legislature yet.
No, sir.
But I'm certain it will. I'm certain it'll fly through. Are your protocols published anywhere where I could find them?
Representative Johnson's office is currently publishing a booklet for the protocols.
I asked because, Mr. Chairman, last February, I was at the Winter Olympics in Vancouver, and I ran into an Anchorage firefighter who is married to Holly Brooks, who's an Olympic skier. And my wife and I were at the event where her race was, and he had an extra state flag, and he gave me the state flag to wave as his wife skied by. And someone from Norway actually asked me what country that was.
Did you tell him?
I don't remember what I said. I made some sort of offhand comment, but I didn't know any protocols on how to fold it respectfully. And being a Boy Scout, I folded it the way you fold an American flag. That was all I knew. So this is fantastic. I think you've done a great job, and I look forward to seeing that, and then I can display and fold my flag properly and respectfully.
Thank you, sir.
Very well done.
Does the Major and the Sergeant Major have anything they want to say to us?
No, do you?
Anything?
Sorry?
Sorry. Nothing that the battalion commander hasn't said already, sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
I would have to say the same. I'd just like to thank all of you guys. So,
thank you very much for what you've done for the state. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next item, yes.
Just a quick comment. The House Bill 98 is displayed on the legislature's BASIS website. I just pulled it up, and it's quite simple and elegant, and you guys did a great job.
Next item in front of us is on the addendum to the agenda. It's item 9B10, Resolution Air 2011-70, Resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its conditional protest regarding renewal of restaurant/eating place license number 4293, doing business as Uncle Joe's Pizzeria located at 3401 East Tudor Road, Anchorage, Alaska.
Move to approve.
We need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Sorry. Paul, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I pull this one so mostly to thank Amanda and the clerk's office for being very diligent and alert to notifying us, the Public Safety Committee, of again, this is similar to, not the same, to the Rum Runner circumstances with a couple of Title IV violations, particularly serving minors and no TAMS card. We do have, in working with Assembly Council and trying to have continuity of the process, we're still working through, of course, but we have a good process through this resolution. We'll have Uncle Joe's owner management, actually speaking with Mr. Hall, will be at the Public Safety Committee meeting on next Thursday, and we will we'll look forward to having this resolved and this conditional protest listed. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on this one? Is there any objection to approval of this item? Go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to take a moment and ask staff to, if Amanda, if you don't mind, going over just briefly for the body what actions that this particular licensee has already taken.
Amanda?
Through the chair, I spoke with John Merkel, and he is the new manager at the Tudor Road location of Uncle Joe's Pizzeria. Since he has been the new manager, there's been a change in policy of procedures. He's confident there will be no more violations. He brings to the restaurant 21 years of management restaurant experience. Since he has been managing at the Tudor Road location, he also works at the downtown location. They have already passed a compliance check with the ABC board, and they have been working closely with the ABC board with Bob Beasley, who is the enforcement supervisor. 3 out of the 4 employees that were involved in the two original notice violations are no longer with the company, and the 4th employee no longer deals with the public or with alcohol. So they have made a lot of changes. I spoke with the manager today, and he already has brought in their TAM cards, so they are in compliance with all employees having a TAM card.
Mr. Chairman, I asked staff to give us that info because I think they're just very quickly two things I need to say about that. One, I think it gives great credit to the owner and management of this particular licensee that they were very, very proactive and worked very hard to resolve this situation. I think they deserve a tremendous amount of credit. And I also think our own staff deserves a tremendous amount of credit for being very proactive and going out and gathering this information for us. So I think everybody on both ends of this has done a lot of work, and it's much appreciated.
Thank you, Mike. Debbie? I need a third on this item according to my clerk, so if I could get a third. Thank you. Debbie?
Okay, I'm confused. We need a third for a resolution?
According to my clerk.
I'll defer to Mr. Wheeler because it's a protest of an alcohol license.
Mr. Chairman, the code section that contains the protest provisions requires a resolution sponsored by at least 3 members.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to comment that it seems to me that everything's been resolved, so I frankly don't quite understand why protest at this point. So I don't think I'm going to be supportive, even though I have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Jennifer?
I had similar concerns with Ms. Osiander. At this point, what is the purpose of having this resolution? I mean, what are you trying to do now that everything has been solved? To me, this seems like we're going to a process that the ABC board was sort of saying maybe we shouldn't be going into. So what is the purpose of this?
As I understand it through the council's office, we need to be very careful that we're not presenting any issues towards any licensee on conditional use and our process, not Title IV, but our process, and not to be arbitrary and capricious. And so, in a fairness standard, to treat the similar violations similarly rather than saying one issue's been taken care of because they say so, as opposed to not having demonstrated process here. So it's a bit different because this is a beer and wine license as opposed to a full-service bar like Rum Runners, but we do have the process, and we, as I said earlier, expect this conditional protest. It's in the resolution that once they demonstrate, the conditional protest will be lifted, and I fully anticipate that in Thursday at the Public Safety Committee meeting.
Right, I just have to say I'll be consistent with my vote from the last votes. I'll be voting no.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Honeman, anything else?
No, that's it, sir.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that same point, I'm in complete agreement with both Ms. Johnston and Ms. Osiander, and we left a meeting earlier, and well, they've already proven they've resolved it. But on advice of council, we can't treat them differently than we treated the last licensee that we dealt with, and we asked Rum Runners to come before the Public Safety Committee. And you're right, the conditions have already been satisfied. And it is very counterintuitive, and I would be just as happy to say, look, let's just let it go. They already did their work. But I'm not an attorney, and I have to trust the advice that we get from our attorneys. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Birch, sir.
If the issue's resolved, I just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to run these guys through the mill again, and I will be a no vote.
Dennis, can you give us your professional opinion?
Mr. Chairman, the advice of counsel that Assemblymember Gutierrez is speaking to, I don't believe came from my office. It may have come from Assembly Counsel.
Okay.
So, to the best of my knowledge, my office hasn't reviewed the issue of whether or not consistent treatment is required in this case.
Thank you, sir. Harriet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nowhere in this application do I see, are we delaying this business's ability to renew their license by delaying this? Because we don't have another meeting until the 29th of the month, I believe.
Right. To my understanding, the ABC Board takes issue with a conditional protest, and they will continue their process. They take that into advisement at their next board meeting. And by that time, as I stated before, and emphatically, I expect that this conditional protest will be lifted as soon as Thursday next week.
Another discussion. Please vote. That motion fails. This item was not approved by the body. It was 5-6. 5 yeas, 6 nays. Next item in front of us is on the addendum to the agenda. It's item 9E6. It's information memorandum AIM 28-2011 School Budget Advisory Commission. What? 9 Echo 2. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, we'll do another one. On page 3, item 9E2, information memorandum AIM 23-2011, Internal Audit Report 2011-02, Online Payment System, Anchorage Police Department. Ms. Gray Jackson pulled that, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to postpone accepting this information report until the meeting of March 29th, based on my comments earlier. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved to second. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that'll happen on March 29th, ma'am. Thank you. Now going back to the addendum to the agenda, item 9E6, information memorandum AIM 28-2011, School Budget Advisory Commission report to the Anchorage School District proposed budget for fiscal year 2011-2012. You pulled that, Ms. Drummond.
Yes, move to approve.
Move to accept it. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 1 second, let me find it here. The report contains several items which I'll be submitting questions about. I learned this afternoon that the School Budget Advisory Commission will make their formal presentation of this report at the beginning of our quarterly meeting, which I believe is at the end of next week, with the school board. And I have several questions, and Ms. Osiander and I have already touched base on the way by. We have a lot of experience between the two of us on several of these issues, and I look forward to the conversation. It should be lively.
The clerk advises me that meeting's on the 25th of March, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there any other comments on that? Any objection to acceptance of that? Seeing none, that item is accepted. We appreciate your comments. We're looking forward to them from both of you. We're now on to page 4, item 9F2, ordinance CO 2011-33.
Move to introduce.
9 Echo 7.
9 Echo 7.
Oh,
Boy, I
sorry.
missed that one. Sorry. Oh, it's on, no wonder it's on the laid on one on the other sheet. You're right, Bill, sorry. Item 9E7, Information Memorandum, AIM 27, 2011, Anchorage School District 6-year fiscal plan. You pulled that, Mr. Starr.
Here, move to accept.
Mr. Starr, sir.
Well, and likewise, I'd like to perhaps have a presentation from the school board on the 25th, maybe a half an hour. They're all nodding there, so we can kind of dissect some of this. It's very useful and helpful. I just
Any
encourage,
objection, Superintendent?
No.
Okay.
also just encourage the body to make sure they keep it. It's well printed, color, the whole 9 yards. So if we could carry that forward, it'd save another copy. Lay it on the table, Ms. Osiander.
Any other comments from assembly members?
9 Echo 7.
Any objection to the acceptance of this item? Not seeing any. Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate it. Another one for 325.
Oh, well, mine's next.
Now I want to go on to page 4, item 9F2, ordinance CO 2011-33, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly, amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21 by adopting a new land use chapter reserved for Eagle River, for Chugiak Eagle River land use regulations provided for in AR 2011-72, providing for an effective date.
Move to introduce.
Second.
We have a third?
Third.
I'd
Debbie?
like, if I could, to substitute the item on the addendum, the 2A. Basically, it is a correction for the chapter itself. Inadvertently, an earlier draft was submitted to the clerk's office. So I'd like to move to substitute the correct version.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, you should have substituted it, ma'am.
Thank you.
And, Mr. Chairman, for clarity, this automatically moves on to the Planning and Zoning Commission as of tonight's action. Is that
Yeah.
what we intend?
Yep, that's what's
Great.
written down here.
Okay.
Any objection to this item going forward? Seeing none, that's done. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Next item in front of us is item 3. It's item 9F3, ordinance CO 2011-34, an ordinance amending the zoning map providing for the rezoning of approximately 4.3 acres from R1 Single Family Residential District to PLI Public Lands Institution District for lots 32, Section 9, T12, NR3W, generally located west of Elmore Road and north of 80th Avenue. Abilene Community Council. Debbie, I've got you down for pulling that one, too.
No, sir, I only pulled F2, so I'm
But you didn't pull
I'm
F3.
confused. No.
Okay. Then that was my mistake. I put you down for both of them, Debbie, and I'll hush my mouth.
I will keep it, though. Good information
No.
for later.
Nobody even pulled F12.
Debbie did, from not rolling in, right? Sorry.
That was a twofer.
Yeah, I pulled them
So we're
both.
done with that one.
Yeah, we got them both in one time.
Then that completes everything that was pulled off the consent agenda. So now we're going to go to persons to be heard. We can't take, it's not, that's what I'm saying, it's not 6 o'clock yet, so we can't do that. So what we're going to do is go into 11A. A is old finished, unfinished action on public hearing items, the same memorandum, AM 118-2011, Planning Board appointment, Donald R. Young, postponed from 2/15/11 to permit a 10-day public hearing.
Move to approve.
Moved and second. Is there any discussion from assembly members? Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. That appointment is confirmed. Next one in front of us is item 11B, same memorandum, AM 119-2011, Urban Design Commission appointment, James W. Sawhill, And this is postponed, again, from the rest to pursuant to public.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion from assembly members? Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, that item is approved. That individual's to that one. Next item is item 11C, Assembly Memorandum AM 120, 2011, Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals Appointment, Dale E. Patrick and Jeff Rune.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion from assembly members? Not seeing any, asking unanimous consent. Those appointments are confirmed. Item 11D, Assembly Memorandum AM 692, 2010, recommendation of award to SMG of Alaska, provide management and operation of the George M. Sullivan Arena, Ben Boeke and Dempsey Anderson Ice Arenas for the municipality of Anchorage. We've had this with us. It's been carried over from numerous hearings. There is no, let me see if there is a motion. The motion to approve is on the floor.
I'd like the motion to postpone to March 29th.
Second.
If I could just speak to that just for a moment, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm still back to the, I'm not sure what you call it, the banner of confidentiality that's over the contract. And so I guess what I'm going to probably do is just sort of bail out on the committee suggestion, and that's the purpose of my postponement. I think there was an expectation based on the last minutes that Finance and Budget would look at it and provide some fleshing out of the contract, and apparently that's not permissible except in executive session, and I'm not prone to do the public's work in executive session at that level. So I think that now it's probably best left up to every assembly member to do diligence on the contract as they see. I will tell you I'm a little flummoxed on why we can't talk about it either in public or therein, and I'll just describe it. Maybe Mr. Kallenbach, you can give me a little bit of guidance. Well, we spoke the other night on the topic, and you stopped yourself mid-sentence and said, oops, I'm not supposed to talk to you at that. And that's the level of frustration that I'm bringing to the table tonight is if I can't talk to purchasing for clarification in the contract for the best interest of the city, who can I talk to? Is that fair, Mr. Chairman?
It's a fair question.
Mr. Chairman?
May not be a convenient one, but it's fair.
Well, if the mayor wants to weigh in, I'd surely like to do it.
The mayor's on the list of people to be heard, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Mayor?
It's my understanding from the municipal attorney that we can talk about the contract. We can't talk about the RFP process, how the scoring went, all that sort of stuff. But am I correct, Mr. Wheeler, that the terms of the contract itself are now essentially available for public discourse?
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Okay, so, and I guess, Mr. Kallenbach, I don't need to answer that question now, but so if I mention something about specific in the contract as it is right now, I'm not going to violate any of your confidentiality statements?
I believe that is correct.
Okay. Can I ask a question for an example?
Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, and I have basically 5 concerns, really, and I guess our purpose here is to maybe have a conversation, and I will have one. I thought I was trying to have one earlier this week, but it was shut down early, and so, Mr. Kallenbach, thank you for calling me back, but there's a clause in there that talks about SMG's ability to put in a $500,000 contribution to upgrades to the facility, and then we have a requirement to pay them back. And it's, I believe it's in the attachment. And so if between now and the next meeting, if you could kind of clarify what that is, it appears that we don't have any say over what the $500,000 investment is from either the assembly or the management, but we're obligated to pay them back as soon as they make it. So I'm reading some of that, and I'm not prepared tonight to talk about all 5 of my concerns, but they are in parking surcharge, this clause about their upgrading to the Sullivan Arena and the $500,000 contribution, and I have 3 or 4 more others. So if we can do that between now and the 29th, I'd be happy to talk to you.
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, I would be glad to discuss that with you.
Do you have any information on the ready about the $500,000 contribution that SMG is enticed to make on behalf of the contract? Do you know it? Or is it are you off guard right now?
I do not have all of that information with me at the present time.
Okay.
But I am aware of several of the things that he proposed.
Well, they're in the contract. They're not proposed. They're kind of, if we agree to the contract, I think we're agreeing to those terms. So
we can answer those questions, Mr. Chairman, if that's the intent.
Well, again, I'm not prepared tonight to go through all of them. Well, Mr. Mayor, I thought yesterday or the day before Friday that it was still a confidential banner. Mr. Wheeler never answered me the question that it was, my distinct email was, is it confidential or not? And that was never replied to me, sir. So I would have done diligence a little bit on that, so.
Well, if you know your questions, we have the answers.
I don't have the contract in front of me. Let's go there, so sorry about that.
Yeah.
Your motion and this postpone action this to the next meeting?
29.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion from assembly members? Go ahead, sir.
I guess I'm just, keep kicking this thing down the road, and I'm just wondering, is the existing contract in holdover, or so we're not adversely impacting anything?
We're not adversely impacting, and we gave them permission, I think, to 6-month interim contract,
Okay.
so we're fine.
Great, thank you.
But this way, he can get his questions answered. The mayor says, and Dennis say he can get the answers to his questions that he wants to get, so let's get that done. Is there any objection from the body? Not seeing any, then this item will come back in front of us on the 29th. 5 minutes, we're taking a 5-minute break, and then we're going to be seeing, then we'll take up Ms. Gilbert, but we can't do it until 6 o'clock. We have to do before we get to you, ma'am, if you don't mind.
I'd like to ask the old chief and the new chief of the Chugiak Fire Department to come forward and just introduce themselves. Thank you.
Miss Oceana meant former chief, right?
Sorry.
New and old, huh?
Whoops.
I'm flattered. Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly, 2 weeks ago, when you honored me with the resolution, the gentleman here with me was unable to attend because of a job conflict, and so I just wanted to bring him here and formally introduce him as the new chief of the Chugiak Volunteer Fire Department. Tom has been with Chugiak almost as long as I have, actually. He was my lieutenant back in the day when I was a captain. He's a career firefighter at Joint Base Elmendorf Richardson, and I'll turn it over to him. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Assembly, Mr. Mayor, greetings. It's a real pleasure to stand before you today. Again, my name is Tom Reinbold, and I took position of Chief of Chugiak in February, the second day of February. I've got some big shoes to fill. I know you folks know Bruce well. He's done a fabulous job for this department, and I certainly look forward to his guidance in my endeavors with the Chugiak Volunteer Fire Department. With that being said, I apologize for not being able to make the last assembly when you presented Bruce with that resolution. It was a beautiful resolution we presented to the body, and they were all very appreciative of that, so thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a few questions, sir.
Sure.
Chris?
I just wanted to commend you on your new assignment and your new role there. And Ms. Johnson and I represent South Anchorage, and of course we have a volunteer fire department in the Girdwood area, and I have extensive experience in Fairbanks with the volunteer fire departments in the outlying area there. But great responsibility, great opportunity, and I know you'll do well.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. Thank you.
No other questions. Thank you, sir, for being
Thank
here.
you.
Appreciate
Good
it.
night.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Lois, you're next, ma'am. So Lois Gilbert, she wants to speak to us. She's asked for an appearance request regarding impound policies.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lois.
My name's Lois Gilbert. I'm before you because my disability assistant got my car impounded. My car left with a licensed driver who had the keys. Unfortunately, he irresponsibly got drunk once he was at his own home after they'd finished running my errands. And my disability assistant was sick with a respiratory infection, decided to drive the car home without my knowledge or permission, and she was stopped and the car was impounded. So I'm asking that the car be released to me without me having to pay any fees because I didn't violate the law. when I was checking about what was required of me, I had licensed drivers go the day it was impounded to retrieve the car, and I found out that even though drunk drivers are only charged a $420 impound fee, I was to be charged a $720 impound fee. I also discovered that even though drunk drivers are only charged a $3 a day storage fee, I was to be charged a $28 a day storage fee. And I would like to know why the municipality is subsidizing drunk drivers and allowing them to obtain a lethal weapon to use against the public, and they're not accommodating my disabilities. The reason I'm so disabled and I have the neck and back disabilities is because some drunk teenagers ran a red light and broadsided the car I was a passenger in. So if the public is to be served, I think the impound fees need to be reconsidered. And I do understand that drunk drivers do have to pay other fees, but they should not have to pay any less than other people have to pay if their cars are impounded. Now, the Americans with Disability Act, Title II, requires reasonable accommodations in state and local laws, rules, policies, and procedures. Alaska state law also forbids discrimination against people with disabilities. Discrimination is defined as a refusal to make an accommodation that is reasonable. Title 18.80.200 of Alaska law says that it is the policy of the state and the purpose of this chapter to eliminate and prevent discrimination. It is also the policy of the state to encourage and enable physically and mentally disabled persons to participate fully in the social and economic life of the state and to engage in remunerative employment. I can see no reason for the state, for the municipality, to be going after the cars of people who are indigent and who have broken the law. So I ask that my car be released to me. If you want to get the impound fee, I think it would be appropriate to get it from my disability assistant since she broke the law. There were extenuating circumstances, so I ask that justice be tempered with mercy, but the fact of the matter is I didn't violate the car, and I'm the one who's had her car impounded. I don't want to have to go to court on this. I am capable of going to court on my own, unlike many disabled people, and I think that the municipality should be trying to help disabled people and not automatically refusing to obey the Americans with Disability Act. I've been in court before appealing animal control tickets when I've got my doctor's prescription to use voice control on my service dog, and nothing is served by fighting the disabled and the accommodations they need for their disabilities. I understand the municipal attorney said that I hadn't signed a form to enable somebody to pick up my car. The reason I haven't signed the form is because until the fees situation is resolved, I don't know who is going to be picking up my car. I know several licensed drivers.
Your time's up now.
Okay. Thank you very much for hearing me on this issue.
Debbie?
Ms. Gilbert and I spoke this weekend, and apparently you did receive then the attorney's document that I emailed you. You got that?
I haven't run across the email yet, but was there anything else besides?
No, basically it was talking about the power of an attorney and having somebody else there. But the two things I wanted to suggest to you. First, a little bit of background. I've been interested in this ordinance, and about 2 years ago, I think, I tried to get some change in it, but the Assembly was not in favor of changing it at all, specifically because of situations where the person who has to pay the burden isn't necessarily the one who caused the problem. but this body's been fairly consistent in terms of enforcing that existing law. The other thing I wanted to suggest to you, since you bring up the ADA question, is potentially a recommendation to go to the Equal Rights Commission, because that's an area where they specifically have authority to act and to make judgments. So, thank you for coming, and I'm sorry you're having these difficulties.
Thank you. Were there any other questions?
There don't appear to be other questions. Thank you,
Mr.
Lois. It's
Chair.
nice to see you again, ma'am.
Thank you.
Actually, I apologize, I
I'm
didn't push
sorry.
the button fast enough. Thank you for coming, Ms. Gilbert, and I appreciate your revealing the difference between impounds for drunk drivers and otherwise. I think that's something the Assembly should look into and make sure that these fees are consistent. If we're going to be consistent about one thing, we should be consistent across the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lois.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Dennis?
If I might, sir, to Ms. Drummond's point, there are two different contracts, and I don't recall exactly when the two of them were bid out, but we did end up with different pricing for the impound because there are two different competitively bid contracts that were awarded. There was an original one for DUI. As you know, DUI was the first program that we started. Then when we added the licensing and insurance provisions, we ended up with a separate contract and a different price for that. But you're right, there is quite a difference between the two.
Dennis, can you just get us a printout on it so we know where we're coming from on this?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And also when the contracts expire so that we can coordinate them upon renewal? Would that make sense?
Yes.
I think it's possible, sure. I'll get you that information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Next item in front of us is item 13A. This is continued public hearing. This is ordinance AO 2011-21, an ordinance of the Anchorage Assembly, amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 12.25.040 to clarify the base amount to be used for calculating the next year's tax increase limitation. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. There's been a little history since then, since this was introduced. So if anybody would like to come and testify, please come forward. Hearing saying no one, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body? Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move to postpone AO 2011 indefinitely. And
Moved and seconded, Elder.
the reason is because, thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, there was a committee formed. Mr. Birch was on that committee, Mr. Hall chaired, and Mr. Kataris and I were also on that committee, and we, with some help from the municipal attorney, have a joint ordinance on the same subject that was introduced this evening, and the public hearing will be held on Tuesday, March 29th. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I want to thank Chris Birch and Elby Gray Jackson and Mike Gutierrez, Ernie Hall, for your great work on this, because you took a very thorny item, and from what I hear, consensus has been reached. So there's some other things. I think we need to move you to the Middle East now, Ernie. Any objection to this item being postponed indefinitely? Not seeing any objection, that item is off the table. Next item in front of us, item 13B, ordinance AO 2011-4, an ordinance repealing and reenacting. This is Title 23. Some history on this before you testify. Is there an S version coming to us that should be here by the 29th or by our first meeting in April? But the administration is bringing an S version. So if you want to testify now, it's fine, but that's not, I think, the document that we'll be passing in front of this assembly. So anybody who wishes to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing, seeing no one, will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing, because I want to get the S version here.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Move to continue to our next meeting, so we can add the S version together and check them out. Any objection? Not seeing any. We've done that. We're now down to item 14A, ordinance AO 2011-32, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section. Okay, to clarify each year's base amount in the calculation of the tax increase, limitation tax cap from Assembly Member Birch. Public hearing this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing, say no one. Public hearing is closed. What's with the body, Mr. Birch?
Second.
Move to postpone indefinitely. There was a second. Chris?
Yes, if I might speak to that. As mentioned earlier, this ordinance was crafted to basically replace the charter amendment that the Taxpayer Protection Act that we had considered earlier this year to enable the voters an opportunity to enshrine in the charter provisions that would basically limit the amount of growth in property taxes on a year-over-year basis. And I think at the time it was suggested that this would be more appropriate as an ordinance, and that would be approved simply by a majority of the Assembly. With that in mind, and with the basically the inability of this body to advance that to a charter amendment, what we have in front of us here at the next meeting will be basically an ordinance that embraces the Taxpayer Protection Act and will be up for consideration at that time. So with that in mind, this particular document, we, as the Chairman had indicated, we met as a committee, and we have an ordinance that will be up for consideration. I think that'll be a good solution, and it'll carry us forward with the security and knowing that we'll have some sort of a better handle on how those increases work on a year-over-year basis. Thank you.
Item of business before we go on to item 14B is going to be, we have some Boy Scouts here. So come up to the speaker here and tell us your name, the troop you belong to, who sponsors you, and your rank.
I'm Josh Barton. I'm part of Troop 125, and I'm first class.
Well, who sponsors your troop?
Fifth Christian Community on Wisconsin.
Okay.
I'm Zachary Ferguson. I am also from Troop 125. I am first class, and we are sponsored by Faith Christian Community Church.
Good.
I'm Ace Brown, and I'm first class, and I go to, and I'm part of Troop 125, and I go to Faith Christian Community Church.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Thank you very much. To the troop leader, come forward, give us your name. How many do you have in your troop?
I'm just a father, but I represent my guest tonight.
No such thing as just a father, believe me. Have you gone on the overnight camps with these kids?
I'm sorry?
Have you gone on the winter freezer-eat camps?
Yes.
Okay, you're not just a father.
No, I'm Ace's father.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you.
We're now on to item 14B under new public hearings. Item 14B is Resolution Air 2011-51, a resolution adopting recommendations to be forwarded to the Anchorage Metropolitan Area Transportation Solutions, AMATS, Policy Committee regarding an amendment to the FFY 2010-2013 Transportation Improvement Program. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward, state your last name, and spell your last name if you would, please. Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body? Moving to second to discussion from Assembly members. Debbie?
I want to bring to this body's attention an issue with one of these road projects. I'm particularly hoping I can get our AMATS reps' ears on this one.
Already read your email, so keep going.
All right. Basically, there's the very badly needed project of the Old Glen Highway reconstruction, and there's a section on that project where the pavement extends straight through to the pathway. So there's no separation between the pathway and the road. And folks that live near Chugiak Elementary School have been really concerned because with the snow you can't see the line and cars are actually going on the path section. So they talked to DOT about getting a little amendment to put some kind of a separation up there. And they hit a snag that I think has affected many other projects, too. DOT said, well, we can do that when you guys agree to maintain the pathway. Well, my local road board and park board vehemently don't want to start getting into the business of maintaining pathways on state highways. It was not in their budget and in their plans. I hope so. So please, please, we need to be real careful about that. And Ms. Johnson at the break told me that that's something Mr. Wheeler is having discussions with DOT over the next few months, and I'm a little sad he's not here, but I hope that Mr. Vacalis will be able to pass that on to him as a request, particularly I think it's bad for all of Anchorage to do that, but particularly when you've got a little LURSA or Arsa-Bursa area, their budget is not built for maintaining state roads. And so I think it's a big issue.
Ms. Osiander, could you just clarify, is that Project G4, the Old Glen Highway Reconstruction Phase 2, or is it a different one?
That's the one.
That's it, thank you.
And basically, the sense we had initially is it's a very cheap fix. It just needs some kind of a railing or a curbing or something for a short, maybe 2 or 3 block portion, Mr. Flynn.
Would Jersey barriers work?
Fine by me, whatever the engineers say. Just something so people feel safe when they walk.
You have our attention, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Starr?
Well, if I could just keep it for a little bit longer on the Eagle River Road upgrade project, which is G3 on the same list. I want to continue to make sure that that gets tracked in here. We had a reshuffle last year to accommodate some South Anchorage projects, and I get it, Jennifer. I know they were there to begin with, and again, we're past all that, and that wasn't what I was trying to do, but to make sure we stay on track with that. If you look, the 2012 timeline would work well. We've got over $7.5 million worth of right-of-way taking already occurred on that road segment, which sort of goes all the way up to the Nature Center on Upper Eagle River Road. So you know how that could be. So
I know where that is.
Move it along and unchanged if you can. It's a great project, and I'd like to see it get done here in 2012.
I like that road better when there's just dirt all the way, no?
You use horses to get to your house.
No, we used to have 70 miles an hour trucks down there because you wanted to get ahead of everybody else. Thank you, sir. Harriet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to agree with Ms. Osiander on the ability of the State Department of Transportation to even clean their pathways. We had some serious issues with Benson Boulevard in my district the summer of the difficulty in cleaning roadways, and it extended to the pathways where the dust and the grit was caked about 3 inches deep, and we got some volunteers out there to try to remove it, but it was like baked in place. And if you're talking about construction and maintenance, that's one thing, but just simple annual maintenance, the state doesn't do a good job of that either, and I don't know what the solution is. But I appreciate the attention being called to that. I also want to call attention to the fact that Spenard Road is on here. Mr. Hall and I have been working with Spenard Road folks, and hopefully there will be a decision on the design before the design money comes into effect in this plan. And also a heads up that Fireweed Lane rehabilitation is on here, item G6. Not intended to start until 2015, and I predict exactly the same kind of community response, Mr. Hall, to that road project when that happens, except that will involve not only the West Anchorage Assembly members, but the Midtown Assembly members. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Vacalis, sir?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to correct the record for Mr. Wheeler, since he's not here. What Mr. Wheeler is actually looking at has to do with liability. And when we engage in an agreement with the state regarding roads, basically what happens is they will not hold us harmless at all. And so we basically have several roads right now, I think there's 7, where he is trying to work out an agreement with the Attorney General. And it's just a language issue, and it's just a common sense issue. But right now, their interpretation is a little bit different than we read it, and we're a little concerned. So that's the issue he specifically is working on, and the Girdwood project is one of those, Ms. Johnson. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
Yep, there's one of notice. First of all, I wanted to encourage the intermodal project at Ship Creek. I know that there's some stimulus money that's into it, and I think it's a great use of those fundings. Then the fleet maintenance and fleet replacement, I guess you'd say, is cycling into the People Mover bus system. I know that's very important as well for transit. But I will highlight there's one area on page 9, and the Glen Highway Muldoon Interchange, item 4 under that, on page 9, and that there's no funding currently, and it's in there from 2010 to 2013. And I just note that at several meetings that I've been to, that the state legislatures have been addressing with DOT, and it's a quagmire, actually, because they've got the new Todd New Commons Mall over there, the Bartlett High, the new VA Center. There's just a lot more traffic, and that's actually the oldest bridged roadway in Anchorage, is that particular bridge, and it's not really, at this point, very functional for ingress, egress, and not a very safe location, a safe way to exit and enter the Glen Highway, very high-speed roadway and a very heavily used roadway. So I'm hoping that we can get that issue addressed as well in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Jennifer Johnson?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify as far as my discussion with Ms. Osiander. I was just saying that Mr. Willett was working on this other issue and with the DOT attorney, and I just thought it was a time, if she wanted to suggest that she had this issue, even though it's a different kind of liability issue, that she could maybe add it to his list. Since he finally is getting a report back, I thought we might as well take full advantage.
Debbie?
Respond to Mr. Honeman's comments about the Muldoon Bridge. When the Takatna Commons came to us for approval, basically that bridge came up as a big issue. Dr. Selkirk and I really tried to get some recognition in the traffic analysis about the problems with that bridge, so I'm really aware of it and absolutely join you in supporting it. The bridge is too low. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Birch, sir?
Yeah, I'm just going to make the point, Lance Wolver, who was formerly with DOT, has spent some time over there, and is, if we have issues with DOT on maintenance along DOT right-of-ways and so forth, he may be a really good resource for us to use since he's working with the city here. Thanks.
Does appear to be anybody else to discuss this item. Please vote. Item was approved unanimously. Next item in front of us is item 14C. Ordinance AO 2011-28, ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, authorizing and providing for the issuance of not to exceed $150 million in aggregate principal amount of tax anticipation notes. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body? Moved to second. Discussion from assembly members. Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Frasca, do you have an estimate of the amount of interest we expect to gain in our usual financing flip?
Through the chair, Mr. Flynn, I don't, but Ross Risvold is here from Public Finance.
Nicely done. Okay.
Okay.
Listen, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your question, Mr. Flynn, through the chair?
Is my recollection is we are able to gain a little arbitrage on this financing mechanism and typically bring in a little bit of revenue to the city. About how much do we hope to make this year, or have we have an estimate yet?
Well, the reason we issue these notes, of course, is to provide for a shortfall for the 100 funds. And what that permits us to do is keep the amount of the shortfall invested in the cash pool.
and we pay interest on the notes that we borrow and issue. And if there is a spread there, we're permitted to keep it as long as we meet other criteria. And, it could be as much as $1 million.
So you don't have an estimate at this point, but if we're lucky, about $1 million.
I think it's approximately $1.8 million.
$1.8 million, okay. Thank you very much. That's all I had.
There are no other questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other discussion from Assembly members? If not, please vote. The item is approved by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14D, Ordinance AO 2011-30, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly, amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 12.07.010 to modify taxes on motor vehicle registration. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no in public hearings, close. What's the wish of the body?
Second.
Moved to seconded. Discussion from Assembly members. Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My recollection is when we'll call it companion legislation, that preceded this was discussed, there was a question of timing and ensuring the state had the opportunity to work through their process before implementation. Given that we're obviously a few months behind that, do we anticipate any difficulty in this one catching up with the other one?
Through the chair, Mr. Flynn, no, we have been working with the state, and they told us that as long as the Assembly had taken final action by April 1st, they would be fine. So we've kept them in the loop about what these changes are, and so we should be good to go.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Fresh. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion from Assembly members? Please vote. You want to vote nay? Okay, I know, but I thought maybe it's just... Anyway, that one's approved, 10-1. What? Do we get more Boy Scouts here? Good. Gentlemen, come on down forward to the seats. Yeah. And then please come forward to the microphone, tell us what troop you belong to, your name, and the rank you hold in Boy Scouts. Come on up.
My name's Adam Fletcher, and I'm from Troop 140, and I'm a Life Scout.
Who sponsors your troop?
Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay, good.
I'm Mark Fletcher, and I am 140, and I am a second-class scout.
Good.
I'm David Mitten, and I'm a first-class.
So which merit badge are you guys working on tonight? Good. And who are the gentlemen with you guys?
My name is Tom Moroff. I'm an assistant scoutmaster and I'm an Eagle Scout.
Good.
My name is Mark Card. I'm the Scoutmaster.
Good. Well, congratulations. If you have any questions, just come on up and ask us. Thanks for being here. Next item in front of us is item 14E, Ordinance AO 2011-29, an ordinance reading. Okay, restriction on employment on leaving municipal service. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record. Hearing and saying no in public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Second.
In discussion from Assembly members. Please vote. That was approved unanimously. You didn't vote no on that one, huh? Next item in front of us is item 14F, Resolution Air 2011-55, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an amendment on a conditional use for a beverage dispensary used to allocate. Okay, this is the Anchorage Brewing Company, located at 717 West 3rd Avenue. Public hearing is now open on this item. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. You're already here. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name so we can keep track of it.
I'm Gabriel Fletcher, owner of Anchorage Brewing Company. last name spelled Fletcher. And my name is Gary Klopfer, Klopfer, and I'm the owner of the Snow Goose Restaurant and Sleeping Lady Brewing Company downtown.
Great. So how can we help you?
Oh, well, I guess we're here to get this approved, so.
Okay. Questions from assembly members? There don't appear to be any questions, sir. Okay. Anybody else? Oh, excuse me, Pat.
No, when they're done.
Okay.
When they're done.
There are no questions for you two gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, we would just like to invite any of you to come down and taste any beer and/or root beer at your pleasure.
Root beer I can help you out with. Beer, can't touch it.
Root beer.
That I can do. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing say no, in public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Pat.
Mr. Chairman, just real briefly, I think you are in receipt of an email with a attached resolution favoring the approval of this ordinance from the Anchorage Downtown Partnership. Furthermore, Mr. Klopfer and Mr. Fletcher appeared before the Downtown Community Council and received their blessings or support.
Good. Anybody else have anything they want to say on this discussion? If not, please vote. Good operator. That was approved unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight. That was pretty harmless, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Next item in front of us, item 14G, Resolution Air 2011-56, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverage conditional use for a duplicate beverage dispensary use and license number 5030. This is doing business as O'Malley on the Green. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record, and spell your last name.
I'm Christina Lewis. I am the food and beverage manager for the Anchorage Golf Course and O'Malley's on the Green. Last name spelled Lewis.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anything you want to tell us?
We respectfully ask for your approval of this matter.
Thank you. Chris, question?
I just want to mention I had an opportunity to visit the new installation there when we had the Halo candidate forum up there here just last week, and it looks great. I've done a great job there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions from assembly members? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no, in public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Second.
Been moved to second for approval. Any discussion for assembly members? Please vote. That was approved, ma'am. Thank you for being here. Next item in front of us is item 14H. 14H is Resolution Air 2011-52, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $2,283,365 from Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. This is a 2010 State Homeland Security Program. Grant activities. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded to approve it. Any discussion from assembly members? Please vote.
Ms. Drummond?
That was approved unanimously by the body. Guys, it doesn't always move this fast. Sometimes we get so bogged down, it'll take hours to get through stuff. No, we're not done yet. Set your clock. Next item in front of us is item 14I, Ordinance CO 2011-31, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly, amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 2.30.070 voting, providing conditions for assembly member participation by means of telephone or other electronic means. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? I don't think he's coming up here. Hearing and saying no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Let's see, Chris?
Well, as you probably may know, Mr. Chairman, I am speaking in opposition to this. Basically, what this proposal does is change a practice that we have to enable assembly members who are traveling or away from the meeting at the time of the meeting to participate by teleconference. I believe I had the municipal clerk forward everyone a copy of an inquiry I made of Lance Ahern, and apparently the systems here in the room are going to be upgraded to the point of having improved teleconference capabilities. I did go through the last 3 years' record, and it appears that I think just about everybody has teleconferenced for a meeting, and I guess I think the idea of prohibiting teleconference, it basically prevents us from representing our constituents in a meeting, and I think it's just bad policy. I think the tendency that we see across the country is actually increasing the amount of teleconferencing and increasing the flexibility and engagement that we have. So I actually speak against what we have here, the proposal. I think we ought to leave it as is, and in particular, since it does accommodate teleconferencing if you're traveling at city expense and away from. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not working. It's just that it's proposed to have it, for special occasions. So anyway, I'm speaking against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. I'm the one that changed it originally back in 2005 to the current system we have now. I just think it needs to go back to a little bit of modification on it. Debbie?
I'd like to offer an amendment on line 25.
Go ahead, ma'am.
On the first page, to add the words "or work-related." So it would read, "or who is outside of the municipality on official municipal or work-related travel business."
Second.
There is
a
second.
Thank you. My rationale for that is, with Alaska as spread out geographically as it is, many jobs require travel to various parts of the state. And oftentimes it's difficult enough to get people willing to run for office if they're going to be penalized on their work, their employment, supporting their family by not being able to participate. It's a real disincentive. So I urge a support for the amendment.
On the amendment, is there any opposition to the amendment? Not seeing any, Debbie.
Thank you.
Can you give the language, if this passes, to the clerk?
Okay, 3 words, "or work-related."
I know.
I can write it down.
I want to make sure we get it right.
Okay.
On the amendment itself, as it's modified, Debbie, any comments?
No.
Jennifer, on the amended document in front of us?
Yes, I have concerns about going back. As one who has sat on a stool in a very cold kitchen up north a number of times as I was bringing skis and volunteers to villages, I would hate to lose that opportunity to call in, even though it was very uncomfortable. And as I said to somebody, I said, this will affect me first. And I try to be a very good assembly person. And I do not support this, particularly since I'm involved in another effort with the state legislature. I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but the state legislature is discussing why the 90-day sessions aren't working. And so I've been speaking with a number of them, and some outside sources is not why it's not working, is how do you make it work? And my suggestion is you make it work with active committees and telecommunication and teleconferencing. And you don't necessarily always have to have meetings in person. And for me to be supporting something like this and on the assembly level and be trying to get the legislature to be more adaptable and more business friendly would be kind of an oxymoron. So anyways, I'm not going to be supporting this, even as amended.
Thank you, Jennifer. Paul, on the document as amended in front of us.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate both efforts here. Actually, I have to thank Ms. Hosianna for bringing that into our work-related. I'm hoping that work-related also includes nonprofits. I'm on a board that, in fact, right after elected, within the first month, I was actually in Hilton Head, South Carolina, as part of a director of a board, and had to attend one of the first few meetings I was in. And of course, it'll be my last year on the board, but I am expected to attend the second week in May again, and this time in Baton Rouge. So I did talk to you, I know, specifically about this, and I'm not sure that without this language that it would have met the criteria, so I'm appreciative of that. At the same time, I also am appreciative of the fact that we need to be in attendance for official record. So I'm also one of those guys that if it's not broke, don't fix it, and I'm really in the middle on this one. So I'm still contemplating all the way until the time I push the button. Thank you.
Mr. Starr.
Well, I asked earlier, Mr. Chairman, the question on procedural when we have an absent or a teleconference vote or a participant, why do we voice vote everything and not just the person on the phone? Did we get an answer on that?
Madam Clerk?
I know it's for the record, but...
For the record.
Yeah, it's in the code that way. It's how it was written. And I think it's to make sure that everybody has a voice, that the person on the phone knows how everybody else has voted.
To me,
you can see it on the board.
Yeah, generally, but in this case with the board vote, you don't really get to see it. To me, the voice voting requirement actually prejudices the vote, I think, in terms of watching it move across the board. So, we may want to look, and I'll research it as we need to change that code. But it seems, that one of those aspects of folks phoning in is the cumbersome nature of having to do a voice vote on 60 different items some nights, and that's challenging to, I'm sure, for the clerk to record all of that, but it just seems to make sense to rely on the board and then just ask that one person to say, how do you vote? And they don't get the luxury of that. But I will say that the computer, when you see it, I haven't done it because I rarely miss those meetings, but the computer's pretty real time. You can see the people sometimes on testimony if the computer's running really well. So the technology upgrades are moving right along. So our citizen form of government says participate, but we also have other things we do. So like Mr. Honeman, I'm not sure. I would like clarification, though, on why we don't. I could not find it in the code before I asked you the question. So what it says to electronically means of recording their vote.
Barbara, does it say voice vote?
I'm pretty sure, Dennis, if you have the code up, I don't have it up in front of me, but it says at least the majority needs to be in the room, and I'm pretty sure it says that there will be a voice vote.
I'll look it up real quickly.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not right vote to have it right now, but I just think it's something that adds to the burden of the evening when somebody's out is to voice vote everything.
Mr. Birch, sir.
Well, I appreciate the amendment, but I think it points out, and this discussion points out, now we're talking about Mr. Hahnemann having a nonprofit obligation. I mean, we all have obligations, and I think it's, I just don't think this is appropriate. It's trying to fix something that's not broken, and I would agree with that, comment. I think the ultimate accountability that we each have is to the constituents that elect us. I think from the standpoint of being able to interact with the body on the occasional requirement that we need to teleconference in, I think we're going to see some improved technologies. That's great. The streaming online video that we have and the capabilities that we have are great. And I do speak against this, even the proposal as modified. Pardon me?
Even as amended.
Even as amended. Thank you.
Not a problem, Mr. Birch. Harriet? Ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Mr. Starr's bringing up the requirement for an 11-person voice vote. After 9 years on the school board and having participated in at least one, maybe two school board meetings remotely from the East Coast and staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning until we adjourned in order to weigh in, the school board secretary was on the phone with whoever was listening in. She asked that person how they were going to vote, and everybody else pushed their button. And I believe whoever was sitting next to the person who was absent was asked to push their button in the way that they said to the secretary. So yes, that person gives up their right to a private vote until it's revealed, but that's part of the cost of of doing business and being out. And I've been listening to Mr. Birch over the last several candidate forums, and I've heard him say we need to be a citizen legislature, and I agree. But I almost want to say, is there a way to amend this to limit the number of absences?
I don't think.
You know, we all have, many of us have elderly parents who cannot come and visit us, and who may require a visit from us on an unforeseen basis, and that's not covered here. It may cover our sickness or our child's sickness or something, but I'm not seeing a flexibility here that I think we need, considering the nature of our work as Assembly representatives who are not doing this full-time.
Thank you, ma'am. Debbie, as amended in front of us?
Actually, I came into this thinking I was going to vote for it, but there's been some pretty good points brought up in discussion. So now I'm not sure. I have to tell you, Mr. Holman, my read on this would be that your participation on a nonprofit board would not allow you. It's pretty specific, municipal business or work-related business, so it would require, I think, another amendment. I missed the email that Mr. Birch sent around about upgrading the technology, so I don't really know what to expect there. The discussion Ms. Drummond brought up about the voting, I think, is a real good point, because I know I get frustrated with all the voice votes and hearing how everybody else is going to vote, and then you can sort of judge, well, maybe it's going to be a good vote for me to go this way or that way. And that's not the way it should be. So I think this needs a little more work. I'm not necessarily against some limitations, but I don't think we've quite got it. Mr. Trainee, as sponsor, if I made a motion to postpone this for a week, do you think you could possibly work with it so that you could address some of these?
I can work with you on it. It's not a problem.
All right. Well, I'm not real eager to take ownership, frankly, on this.
Why don't we postpone it till the 12th? I think our meeting is the 12th of April, because I don't want to overburden us on the 29th.
Second.
I'm sensitive to the clerk that tells me the 29th is getting buried.
Can I make a suggestion? Postpone it until after the upgrade happens, and let's see what happens, what that gives us the capability of doing. I have seen the upgrade at the last convention that I went to, the Granicus upgrade with iPads, and it's probably going to be a heck of a lot more capable than what we've got going on here, not to mention a whole lot less visible.
Why don't we just shoot for the 12th of April? Okay, please.
With more information coming on the upgrade.
Fine.
We need to postpone to the 12th of April.
Any objection?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
the 12th of April is my birthday, and I'll probably be on a beach in Tahiti. I'll call into... No, I'm just kidding.
That's right. I might be absent, too.
Okay. It's coming back in front of us on the 12th. Now, we're now down to special orders. There aren't any. Unfinished agenda, there is none. Thank you. Audience participation. We're on 17. Is there anybody here who wants to discuss any item with the Assembly for 3 minutes? Come forward, sir. We need you to spell your last name for the record, if you would, please, sir.
My name is Jerry Trader. Spelling is Trainor, close to your name, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, it is.
The issue I would like to discuss with you tonight, and I know I have a very limited time, is the increases in land tax values that have happened since we got our green cards. I've taken the time to analyze many properties in Anchorage, and I'd like to just bring this forward to the cost per square foot of land that's been assessed on different properties. Mr. Birch, your land value is $4.78 a square foot. Ms. Johnson, your land value is $2.11 a square foot. Mr. Honeman, one of your properties is $8.49 a square foot. The other one is $8.76 a square foot. Mr. Trainee, your land is $7.06 a square foot. Harriet Drummond, $10.57 a square foot. Ernie Hall, $12.21 a square foot. William Starr, $1.69 a square foot. and Patrick Flynn, $28.65 a square foot.
You're taking us to dinner.
I don't know what he did to do that, but he certainly holds a record here.
They know I know you, Mr. Chairman.
And Debbie Osiander, yours is $12.63 a square foot, and the mayor is $18.11 a square foot. The problem that we've seen, and I live on Hood Court, Westwood Drive on West Northern Lights, and we talked to the assessor's office, several of us in my community area, and about 30 of us have met and talked about appeals. 22, I believe, has actually appealed the assessor's office for the land value increase. I'm not talking about buildings. I'm talking about the land values and why they increase so dramatically from one year to the next. And especially when we come up with a question of William Sheffield has 54,082 square feet. His land values is $7.06 a square foot. Blythe Marston on 3001 Macaulay has a property of 44,325 square foot. Their land value is $7.94. Interesting thing, the property right beside this one has a 9,750 square foot lot, and the square foot area is $21.22 a square foot, sitting right beside the $44,000 lot of square foot at $7.94. So what brings to question is how is this so different in certain areas of Anchorage, and how come some properties go up dramatically, others stay the same, or others go down? None of our group in this Westwood area are protesting paying taxes. And I've talked with Mr. Flynn about this multiple times, and Debbie Ostrander, Chris, Mr. Hall, and it's like, what's going on? How come the assessor's office targets a particular piece of property or group of properties and suddenly increases them $80,000, $90,000, $96,000, $100,000 on a particular piece of property on the land? I own a lot that was the end of Hood Court, used to belong to Stan Planinger. Maybe some of you might know him. It's a 12,000 square foot lot. The house was built in 1959. Those land values went up $96,600 from last year to this year. Why? The assessor's office can't give us a good, clear answer. We've gone to the Turnagain Community Council meeting asking questions, and he says, well, there's a particular type of formula we put into this, and what is the formula? Well, you'd have to come down to my office, and he goes on and on and on. So I talked to one of the assessors, John Amore. He says, well, we go by vacant land values. He said, I'll give you 3 land values that are vacant, and you can go look at them. You get the public inquiry. So I did. And now these are vacant land values according to the assessor's office. One at 2360 Lord Baranoff. It has a land value of $205,021.35 a square foot. Vacant land with the house, a 2,700 square foot house on it. It was built in 2008.
Sir, I hate to interrupt you, but you're
brand new house. Yes.
We got questions for you, sir.
Go ahead.
Harriet, you're first. Harriet?
Thank you. I'd like to hear the rest of Mr. Trainor's testimony.
It's fine. Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay,
Trainor.
thank you.
I just need somebody to ask that question.
Okay. Here's another vacant land value that's $231,020.53 a square foot at 2012 Forest Park Drive. It has a 3,012 square foot house. So when we get these kind of comments back from the assessor's office, vacant land with a house on it, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Our trust in the competence of the assessors is in question because we don't get a good, straight, clear answer. And when we don't get a good, straight, clear answer, our only position is to appeal. And appeal is quite a lengthy process. We have to prove the value of our land, go with a bunch of documented appraisals, and go through quite a bit of paperwork to do this. And I just want to bring this to the Assembly as an issue that it doesn't seem fair. Why should some properties be assessed large and other properties go down in different parts of Anchorage? Why shouldn't everything be basically similar? I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, sir.
Thank you. I believe you left me and Ms. Gray Jackson out, and I have not done that analysis myself. I'd be curious to know what I'm paying per square foot.
I didn't have when I accessed L.V. Gray Jackson and your properties, you didn't come up on the public inquiry. Now, I don't know why. It wasn't there.
Does that still think you did?
Probably under my wife's name, Mr. Chairman.
And it could very well be. Okay. Could very well be. So I've got a handful of properties that I've looked at all over Anchorage, and the similar process of land going up and down is pretty phenomenal.
I appreciate the amount of effort and research that you put into it. It's very interesting.
Mr. Honeman.
Well, that's right, Mr. Trent. I was going to tell you, I have actually been working with a constituent on this very issue, and it is kind of perplexing because this man had made a purchase about 3 years ago, used a recent appraisal, from a professional appraiser for the purchase. And then, in fact, the assessor's office website actually says if you bring it in there. Now, they've been very helpful, and I've yet to set the meeting where the three of us can get together with the staff. But I'm actually, this is very good timing for me because I'm interested in now even more so when you bring these comparisons up, they're very stark. I do know, I can tell you, and I can't speak for the assessor's office, but I do know that each land has different zonings, of course, and then there are different amenities and service areas that come into play here, different road districts, and like in the Chugaki River area, they have subverse instead of arts, and I mean, there's all sorts of things that come into play, but clearly there's some stark differences here, and I'm sure there's an explanation. I'd be curious to find out that too, so I'd love to have a meeting where we could perhaps get together with the assessor's office so I could be more clarity on this as well. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Paul, what I'm going to do is set a work session up with the city assessor for the 25th.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
We'll set it out.
I have
Yes,
the
sir.
results. Mr. Gutierrez's property, land is valued at $10.78 a square foot. And if I didn't do it wrong, Ms. Gray Jackson's she wins the prize, folks. You're sitting down, $25.91 a square foot.
Oh, no. Flynn had 28.
But she's coming up. Well, Mr. Trainer,
Sir, Mr. Trainer, we're going to have a work session on this with the city tax assessor. You're welcome to come to it. It'll be down at City Hall on the 25th of March.
When is this?
The 25th of March, sir.
25th of March.
If you go on the web, the clerk's office, you can check and see when it's scheduled.
Well,
Because we need to talk to him about this.
I just want to thank you for your time, because a lot of the people in this property on Westwood, the houses were built in 1959, 1960. A lot of them fell into Cook Inlet when the earthquake happened out there. So it's an area that's kind of questionable. We have no view. There's no beachfront property. There's no view of the mountains. It's just trees around each one of our individual properties. So I was told by one of the assessors it's very privileged and very prestigious property. I wonder about that. And he said it's got a low crime value because there's no crime happening, so I thought maybe I should go out and start shooting my gun in the air once in a while to create a little bit of a disturbance. But
You want to do that?
maybe no, I wouldn't want to say where I was going to go with that one. But it does raise questions. You know, Bill Sheffield's mansion over there, land values is $7.06 a square foot. And mine is about 18, and I've got, I'm not a young man anymore. I'm turning 74 here in another month, and there's a lot of elderly people in my property. Barbara Wilkins, she was on the phone to me about a month ago with tears in her voice, wondering what is she going to do. She's 81 years old, and wonders, do I have to sell my land to pay the taxes that I've lived there for most of my life? And those are the questions that are human questions that the computer just doesn't quite deal with when you punch in a formula and out comes some sort of an attachment. So I would appreciate you having a discussion on this, and I'll notify several of my neighbors, and we would like to be there to hear your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Trainer. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll talk
Sorry,
to you.
Harriet, and then Chris.
I'm done.
Chris?
Thank you very much for coming, Jerry.
I as well, Jerry, wanted to say I appreciate your call, and it was good to get to know you. From the standpoint of one of the neighbors I had talked to was concerned because the valuation of the property had gone way up and the house had gone down, and not so much a concern about the total number was too far off from the total value. Is that kind of in your experience? Or, I mean, is the total valuation close to what you would sell your property for if you were to sell it?
Let me just answer that as quickly as I can. I have two properties over there. My one property, the increase went from $353,000 to $423,000. I don't think I could sell it for $330,000 maybe.
Is that right? Okay.
But I said $423,000.
Was this in 1 year?
How's that?
Was this just in 1 year?
Yes.
The increase?
From $353,000 to $423,000 in 1 year.
Yeah.
And another property we have that my son lives in, its value went from $279,800 last year. This year, it's rated at $352,500. So the house went from $150,000 to $126,000, but the land went from $129,000 to $226,000. That's a $96,600 increase. The land square foot is $18.78 a square foot.
Just to follow up, did you get your appeal filed? I'd suggest that you...
Yes,
okay,
you bet I did.
That is the process.
And so did about 20 of my neighbors who we've gotten together several times. Harry was at one of our group meetings, and we talked about the appeal process. So it's been something that is in the forefront of this small group of neighborhoods over there. Lindsay Holmes lives next door to my area, and so does Hollis French. Now, I don't know if they appealed. I'm hoping they did. But
okay. Thank you.
You bet. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
We'll see you on the 25th. Anybody else wish to testify on any issue? Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
State your name clearly for the record, spell your last name.
Billy Ray Powers, P-O-W-E-R-S.
There you go.
This is a good subject here. One of the guys that's out in my area there called me to see where I was on the issues, and he got to talking about this very topic. He's an attorney, and he's got a pretty nice property out on Lake Otis Road, and he managed to get it reduced $60,000. But he's an attorney, and I mean, he jumped through quite a few hoops to get this done. Appraisals, fiddle around. I mean, he was going on and on about it. You know, this doesn't work, and he's an attorney. That's my point. What if you work at Walmart, say you're working 3 jobs? Do you have time to jump through hoops and contest your property appraisal? I'll tell you what. My tar paper shack, I will take $50,000 less than the city appraises it for. So if the city thinks it's worth all this money, why don't they just pay me? And there's some room in it. They can go to the Heritage Land Bank, and the city can make some money. You know, the appeal process is very difficult for the average citizen here. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Question for you.
Do you?
Believe it or not. Chris?
Yeah, I was just wondering, does Snowzilla add a few $1,000 on top of the assessment valuation there?
That just depends on who you talk to.
Okay, just curious. Thanks.
Thank you, Billy. Appreciate you being here. Anybody else wish to testify on any issue? Hearing and seeing no one, that part of the agenda is closed. We're now down to assembly comments. Harriet?
No comments. Glad to be going home early.
Chris?
Good night. Looks like, would I be the winner tonight? 8:20, or did somebody?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Elby?
Good night. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jennifer?
Now, I could talk for a little bit longer. Right now, Elvie and I are tied. No.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Bill?
Housekeeping matters on the schedule. March 17th is a Budget and Finance Committee meeting. We're moving that to Committee of the Whole to jointly combine with the 325, the March 25th work session on fund balances. So that's from 12 to 1. So Budget and Finance will also do that again in April on the 21st, combined to the meeting on the 22nd. So the clerk can adjust the schedule accordingly. The 21st has also been moved to the 22nd to correspond. So thank you.
Can you give those dates again, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, March 17th has been moved to the 25th. There's already a work session on that from 12 to 1. We'll just do all the business together on that. And then also on the 21st, we'll move that to the 22nd from 12 to 1:30, which will be the first quarter budget adjustment discussion. That's all.
So tell us about your engine dying. How far You were, 2,000 feet over the ground?
Yes, sir. I just, when you fly Great Alaska, you have dependency on your engines. And so contrary to the news, I was not in Juneau. I was actually at Yentna Station watching the Iditarod at 9:15 yesterday morning. My engine failed, oil all over. I looked like that aviator. So happy to be here today. Wished I was in town yesterday, missed some obligations therein. But, yeah, it happens. All of you know I fly and pilot a lot, and it's a wonderful state. I will plug the Iditarod, though. It was very well run this year, and there was just, the river was just plugged with folks, and it was great. I had a lot of assistance. I was able to get my plane back safe and sound, as I'm here, obviously a testament. So thanks for asking, and those that were concerned, I appreciate that as well.
Ernie, we're now down to you.
No comment.
Paul?
I just challenge anybody to know what Yukigassen really stands for in that definition, but we have the U.S. team from Alaska that could compete internationally, but go Yukigassen and go for a rendezvous. Thank you.
Mike?
Just glad Mr. Starr is here, too. Good pilot, knows how to deal with emergency situations. Obviously, Mr. Starr knows what he's doing. But also to remind some of my colleagues that gambling is a sin. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
But usually by the people that lose, gambling's a sin. Debbie? Kids, thanks for being here tonight. So does this complete your requirements for your communications merit badge? One what? One requirement. Okay. And you guys are working on merit badge too? Same one? Which one are you working on? Good. Well, thanks for being here. We appreciate having you here. Entertain a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.